And we begin with a fair question that many of you might be wondering. Is Iran's nuclear weapons program, quote, completely and totally obliterated? Now, President Trump said Saturday that was, in fact, the case for the, quote, key nuclear enrichment facilities. But what about the entire nuclear program? Is it all gone? It has only been 4 days since the U.S. military struck those 3 Iranian nuclear sites with more than a dozen GBU-57ABs. That's the massive ordnance penetrator bomb, as well as with 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Now, intelligence assessments from Israel, from the International Atomic Energy Agency, and from the United States government are still evolving as more information is gathered. Now, CNN and other news organizations reported on an initial intelligence assessment that said that the U.S. strikes did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back by months. Now, as a response today, President Trump and his administration are pushing back. They are asserting that Iran's entire nuclear program, not just key nuclear enrichment facilities, not just those 3 sites, the entire program, they say, has been decimated.
Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate.
It was really bad. It was devastating. They were obliterated. Like you can't get into the tunnels.
Now, later this afternoon, Trump's director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, on X posted, quote, "New intelligence confirms what President Trump has stated numerous times. Iran's nuclear facilities have been destroyed. If the Iranians choose to rebuild, they would have to rebuild all 3 facilities entirely, which would likely take years to do," unquote. She did not provide details of what that new intelligence might be. And then, just moments ago, CIA Director John Ratcliffe said, quote, "CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes. This includes new intelligence from a historically reliable and accurate source/method." Notable that CIA Director Ratcliffe said that the nuclear program was severely damaged. That's the term he used, not totally obliterated. It is, of course, possible that at some point after more intelligence assessments are completed, the president's claims of total obliteration of the entire program could bear out to be true. But so much right now remains unknown. We still do not know what is underneath all the rubble at these bombed out sites. Has everything been completely destroyed? Another question, how much enriched uranium was transported from those sites by the Iranians before the attack on Saturday? At this stage in the game, even President Trump's own intelligence community has not come to a final conclusion about the level to which Iran's nuclear program has been set back. It's simply way too early to know. Now, CNN was first to report that one early DIA, or Defense Intelligence Agency, assessment suggested that the U.S. military strikes on Iran this weekend did not completely destroy the core components of Iran's nuclear program, setting back the program by only a few months, not a few years. Now, it's a low confidence assessment, meaning that the DIA is far from sure about it. It was described to CNN by 7 people briefed on the DIA assessment, are now reporting stress that the assessment's conclusion could evolve as new information comes to light. Now, CNN reached out to the White House before reporting on this DIA intel assessment, and the White House attacked the assessment but confirmed that it exists. Even President Trump himself today confirmed it.
You're not disputing the report said what it said, even though it was initial.
The report said what it said, and it was fine. It was severe, they think, but they had no idea. They shouldn't have issued a report until they did.
Fine. But here's the thing. Today, President Trump and his administration are going after shooting the messengers in an increasingly ugly way. They're calling journalists fake news for true stories. They're calling for an excellent CNN reporter, Natasha Bertrand, to be fired, which is preposterous. And to which a CNN statement today reads, "We stand 100% behind Natasha Bertrand's journalism," as they should. The Trump administration is also accusing any news media who reports on this intel assessment as not being patriotic.
And then the instinct of CNN, the instinct of the New York Times, is to try to find a way to spin it for their own political reasons, to try to hurt President Trump or our country. They don't care what the troops think.
You, especially you, should be proud of those pilots, and
Very
you
much
shouldn't
so.
be trying to demean them.
No, there's a
Those
difference, sir,
pilots
between
flew
asking about
at
an
great
assessment
risk, a
and
big
the
chance
skill
that they'd
of
never
the
come
US
back home and see their husbands
is
or their
questioning
wives. You should be praising those people instead of trying to find some. By getting me, by trying to go and get me, you're hurting those people. They were devastated. You know,
It goes without saying, of course, the pilots and service members involved in this mission deserve honor and respect for carrying out a dangerous, risky mission assigned by their commander-in-chief. And if it turns out that Iran's nuclear program was not completely obliterated, as the president asserts it was, that doesn't mean it was a failure on part of the pilots. The bunker buster bombs they dropped had never been used before, and there was always a question as to how much damage they could actually do. No one is questioning whether this was a heroic and valiant effort on behalf of the United States. The key questions for the American people and the world are simply about the degree of success of the operation and the current state of Iran's nuclear weapons program, and what the intelligence, not the politicians, what the intelligence reveals. Our obligation as journalists is not to praise President Trump or protect his feelings or to disparage him or to praise him for that matter. Our obligation is to report facts. In this case, the fact is that an initial DIA intel assessment out of Secretary Pete Hegseth's own Pentagon exists. And that's not going to change, no matter how many insults Trump levels. A lot of insults, by the way. In a Truth Social post, he calls CNN and the New York Times, quote, bad and sick people. The administration casts any reporting on any questioning on the success of an incredibly difficult military operation as fake, as unappreciative, and as disrespectful to service members. But that, however, flies in the face of what journalists have hopefully learned throughout the last 50 years of U.S. history. What did we as Americans learn from the leak of the Pentagon Papers? A top secret 7,000-page leak of a Department of Defense study detailing the history of U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Well, perhaps President Richard Nixon's White House Chief of Staff, H.R. Bob Haldeman, said it best in 1971, caught on tape speaking to Nixon about what the Pentagon Papers might suggest to the American people.
But out of the gobbledygook comes a very clear thing, which is you can't trust the government, you can't believe what they say, and you can't rely on their judgment. And the implicit infallibility of presidents, which has been an accepted thing in America, is badly hurt by this, because it shows that people do things the president wants to do even though it's wrong, and the president can be wrong.
The Pentagon Papers showed us that the government, the Lyndon Johnson administration, the Richard Nixon administration, that officials have been lying to the American people for years about success in Vietnam at the cost of thousands of lives of American troops, service members who served bravely and honorably, and thousands of lives of innocent Vietnamese. Now, some say the lesson from the Iraq War fiasco was that political leaders could twist intelligence to make a case for war. You know who thinks that? President Trump thinks that.
We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East. They lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none.
Now, it is difficult to argue that the news media writ large questioned the Bush administration's cause for war sufficiently 20 years ago. And again, we don't know yet whether this administration is accurately portraying what happened in Iran or not. We don't know. That's the point of publishing what we know, that the government learns once we learn it. The lesson's there. The news media needs to press for facts, even if it's uncomfortable, even if, as Americans and as humans, there is a personal instinct to rally around the flag. Asking questions is literally our job, demanding facts and answers, instead of just taking a president's word for it. History has taught us that the most pro-service member action we can take is to ask questions of our leaders especially in times of war. That, for journalists, is the height of patriotism.